Welcome back to the dark corners of the mind. Turn down the lights, and let me ask you a question. Have you ever walked into a room, a boardroom, a family gathering, or maybe just looked in the mirror and felt a cold, sinking weight in your stomach? That specific, suffocating dread that tells you, you are a fraud. Psychologists call it Imposter Syndrome. It's the nagging voice that says you don't belong, that your success is an accident, that at any moment someone is going to point a finger and scream, "Get out." Now imagine that feeling, but amplify it. Imagine you aren't just hiding a lack of skill or a gap on your resume. Imagine you are hiding a stolen life, a stolen name. In the grim darkness of the far future, there is a man who stands as the absolute symbol of honor. He is the Lord of Macragge, the chapter master of the Ultramarines. To billions, he is a demigod of war, a statue of unshakable loyalty encased in blue ceramite. But here is the truth that history tried to bury, a truth that changes everything. Marneus Calgar died over 400 years ago. The man sitting on the throne today is a liar, a serf, a ghost named Tacitan. Today, we aren't just talking about a space marine. We are dissecting the most successful, most devastating case of stolen valor in galactic history. We are going to peel back the armor, layer by layer, to find the terrified boy hiding inside the machine. This is the story of the lie that saved the Imperium. Part 1. The Ghost of Nova Thulium. To understand the lie, we have to go back to where the truth died. We are not on the war-torn battlefields of the 41st Millennium yet. We are drifting back through the centuries to a place that looks deceptively peaceful, the agri-world of Nova Thulium. Picture the American Midwest, but scaled up to planetary proportions. Endless fields of golden grain, massive harvesters crawling across the horizon like iron beetles, and a sky that stretches on forever. It creates an illusion of tranquility, but in the Imperium, peace is just a mask for the grinding gears of a feudal machine. Here, society is sliced into two distinct halves. On one side, you have the nobility, the owners of the land, the bloodlines that matter. And on the other side, the serfs, the helots, the nameless gears that keep the machine turning. Enter two boys. They are friends, or at least as close to friends as the rigid caste system allows. First, there is Marneus Calgar, the real Marneus Calgar. He is a child of privilege, soft hands, bright eyes, a heart full of romantic stories about heroes and angels. He dreams of the stars. He believes that his noble blood is a ticket, a guarantee that he is destined for greatness. He is innocent, painfully innocent. And then there is Tacitan. Tacitan has no last name. He has no inheritance. He is a serf, born to serve the Calgar estate. While Marneus dreams of glory, Tacitan understands the dirt. He understands labor. He possesses a quality that his master lacks, a quiet, stoic endurance, a capacity to suffer in silence. They run through the fields together. They play at war with wooden sticks. But even in their games, the dynamic is clear. Marneus gives the orders. Tacitan ensures they are carried out. Marneus is the protagonist. Tacitan is the background character, destined to fade away when the credits roll. But destiny has a twisted sense of humor. Let's pause here for a second. In the United States, we are obsessed with the self-made man. It's the core of the American dream, the idea that it doesn't matter where you start, only where you end up. We love the story of the janitor who becomes the CEO. But the Imperium of Man is not America. It is a rigid, genetic aristocracy. Biology is destiny. If you are born a serf, you die a serf. The idea that a peasant could rise to lead the Emperor's angels isn't just unlikely, it's heresy. It breaks the fundamental order of their universe. So when Tacitan and Marneus are selected for the aspirant trials, the brutal training to become space marines, it's not a level playing field. Marneus is there because it is his birthright. Tacitan is there simply to carry his master's luggage, to protect the investment. The training takes place on the moon of Thulium Minor, a desolate, rocky purgatory. The air is thin, the gravity is punishing. Their instructor is a man named Crixus. To the boys, Crixus looks like a god, a towering figure of muscle and scars, a veteran of the Ultramarines. He pushes them, he breaks them, he forces them to march until their feet bleed, to fight until their vision blurs. Marneus, the noble boy, struggles. The reality of war is not like the stories. It hurts, it's cold, it's unglamorous. But Tacitan? Tacitan thrives. The serf is used to hardship. He is used to pain. He drags his master through the mud, whispering encouragement, carrying the weight for both of them. "Get up, Marneus, please. Just one more ridge. If you stop, he'll fail you. If you stop, they send us back. I can't go back to the fields. I can't let you go back to the shame. Move." But Crixus isn't what he seems. The boys don't know it yet, but they haven't been drafted into the Emperor's service. They have been drafted into a slaughterhouse. Crixus is a traitor, a cultist hidden in plain sight, worshipping the blood god, Corn. He isn't training them to be soldiers, he is fattening them up. He is preparing them to be sacrifices. The realization comes too late, not in a classroom, but in a cave, smelling of copper and dried blood. The boys stumble upon the truth. An altar, symbols of rage etched into the rock, the skulls of previous aspirants. They try to run. They are children running from a monster. Marneus Calgar, the noble heir, trips. Maybe it was fear. Maybe it was exhaustion. He falls into the dirt, looking up at the man he thought was his teacher. Crixus doesn't hesitate. There is no monologue, no villainous speech. Just the wet, sickening sound of a blade entering flesh. The real Marneus Calgar dies on a cold moon, terrified and alone, bleeding out into the dust. His dreams of heroism, his noble bloodline, his destiny, all spilled out in seconds. And watching from the shadows is Tacitan. This is the moment. This is the split second that defines the next 400 years of history. Most people would run. Most people would scream. But Tacitan feels something else. Not just fear, not just grief. He feels rage. He grabs a weapon. It's not a power sword. It's probably just a training knife or a jagged rock. The fight is brutal. It is messy. It is not the choreographed dance of a duel. It is a street fight for survival. Tacitan doesn't fight with honor. He fights with the desperation of a cornered rat. And somehow, against all odds, against a traitor Marine initiate, the boy wins. He kills Crixus. He stands over the bodies, the body of the monster and the body of his friend. The Ultramarines are coming. He can hear their drop pods in the distance, descending to investigate the silence. Tacitan has a choice. Option A, tell the truth. "I am Tacitan. The master is dead. I survived." Result? He goes back to being a serf. Or worse, the Inquisition purges him for seeing the taint of chaos. He becomes a footnote, a nobody. Option B, he looks at his dead friend. He looks at the boy who wanted to be a hero so badly but wasn't strong enough. Tacitan decides to lie, but not to save his own skin. He lies to save his friend's dream. When the Ultramarines burst into the cave asking for the survivor's name, the boy covered in blood doesn't say Tacitan. He stands up straight. He swallows his grief. He buries his own identity in a shallow grave right there in his mind. "I am Marneus Calgar." And just like that, Tacitan died. He didn't steal a medal. He didn't steal a paycheck. He stole a death sentence. He looked at the hardest path in the galaxy, the path of a space marine, a path of eternal war, surgery, and suffering, and he said, "I will take this burden because you couldn't." This is the stolen valor paradox. In our world, stealing valor is an act of cowardice. It's wanting the applause without the sacrifice. But what Tacitan did was the exact opposite. He took the sacrifice, and he threw away the applause. He gave the credit to a ghost. He committed the perfect crime, not for profit, but for penance. But as he would soon learn, the problem with wearing a mask is that eventually, the mask starts to eat into your face. Part 2. Building the lie. The lie began with a name, but it was cemented with surgery. When the apothecaries of the Ultramarines took the boy who called himself Marneus Calgar, they didn't just train him, they dismantled him. They cracked open his ribcage to shove in a second heart. They drilled into his skull to implant the neural interfaces. They pumped his veins full of chemicals that turned his blood into something closer to acid. For any other aspirant, this process is torture. It is the price of ascension. But for Tacitan, lying on that cold metal table, the pain was a mercy. Every cut of the scalpel was a distraction. Every bone that was broken and reset was a punishment he felt he deserved. As long as he was screaming in physical agony, he didn't have to hear the voice in his head asking the question that would haunt him for 4 centuries. What happens when they find out? Because they check everything in the Imperium. They check genetics. They check lineage. They are obsessed with purity. It is a miracle, or perhaps a dark joke of fate, that the gene seed of Robute Guilliman, the most noble of all Primarchs, accepted the body of a low-born serf without rejection. Or maybe it wasn't a miracle at all. Maybe the biology of a space marine doesn't care about nobility. Maybe the gene seed just recognized a will to survive that was stronger than steel. This brings us to a figure that haunts the American consciousness, a man who would understand Tacitan better than anyone else in the galaxy, Don Draper. If you have watched Mad Men, you know the twist. The man in the gray suit, the creative genius, the icon of 1960s success, doesn't exist. He is Dick Whitman, a frightened poor kid who swapped dog tags with a dead officer in Korea to escape a life of misery. He built a fortress of lies, and inside that fortress, he became a legend. Tacitan is the Don Draper of the 41st millennium. Both men committed identity theft. Both men buried their pasts in a shallow grave. Both men look great in a suit, one in tailored wool, the other in ceramite armor. But there is a fundamental difference in their motivation, and this is where the story of Calgar becomes something truly American. Don Draper stole a name to run away. He wanted to drink, smoke, and womanize his way into comfort. He wanted to escape responsibility. Tacitan stole a name to run towards the fire. He didn't take the name Marneus Calgar to get a discount at the commissary. He took it so he could stand on the front lines against hell itself. He took it because the real Marneus was too weak to carry it. This creates a specific, grinding psychological pressure. It's called the imposter's overcompensation. When you know you are a fraud, you cannot afford to be average. A natural-born genius can have a bad day. A legitimate heir can make a mistake and be forgiven because it's in his blood. But the imposter? The imposter has to be perfect, every single day. Tacitan trained harder than any other neophyte. When the others slept, he cleaned his bolter until his fingers bled. When the others ate, he studied the Codex Astartes until he could recite it backwards. He wasn't driven by ambition. He was driven by terror. He had to be the best marksman, the best tactician, the most loyal soldier, because if he was even 1% less than perfect, someone might look too closely at his file. Someone might ask where he was really born. He became the embodiment of the Ultramarines' ideal, rigid, disciplined, flawless. Not because he believed in the rules, but because the rules were his hiding place. He wrapped himself in the flag of the Imperium so tight that no one could see the peasant underneath. Years turned into decades. Decades turned into centuries. The boy named Tacitan disappeared completely. In his place stood a Colossus. He rose through the ranks with terrifying speed. Scout, battle brother, sergeant, captain, and finally, chapter master. The irony is staggering. The Ultramarines are the poster boys of the Imperium. They are the symbols of order, aristocracy, and high culture. They look down on the unwashed masses. And yet for 400 years they have been led, commanded, and saved by one of those unwashed masses. The greatest champion of the nobility as a peasant in disguise. It proves a dangerous point, one that the High Lords of Terra would burn worlds to suppress. Nobility is a lie. Greatness isn't born in the blood, it is forged in the trauma of having to survive. Tacitan didn't just fake it until he made it, he faked it until he became it. He wore the mask so long that the skin underneath rotted away, leaving only the mask. But even the strongest mask cracks when you hit it hard enough. And for Calgar, that crack didn't come from a bullet. It came from a memory. Every time he looked at the banner of the First Company, every time he recited the names of the fallen, he wasn't mourning heroes. He was mourning the only people who might have understood him. He was mourning the fact that he was still alive, while better men, men who actually owned their names, were dead. This leads us to the tragedy of the First Tyrannic War, the moment where the Imposter Syndrome turned into something much darker, survivor's guilt on a planetary scale. Part 3. Survivor's Guilt and the Broken Colossus. If the training on Nova Thulium was the forge that shaped the lie, then the First Tyrannic War was the hammer that shattered the man inside it. Warhammer 40,000 is defined by excess. Everything is too big, too loud, too violent. But the battle for Macragge wasn't a war. It was an extermination event. When Hive Fleet Behemoth descended upon the realm of Ultramar, they didn't come to conquer. They came to eat. The sky turned black with spores. The ground churned with billions of scuttling bioforms. For the first time in thousands of years, the Ultramarines, the masters of strategy, the architects of order, found themselves staring into the maw of something that couldn't be outsmarted. You cannot negotiate with a hurricane. You cannot flank a tsunami. Calgar stood at Cold Steel Ridge. He stood there not as Tacitan, the serf who stole a name, but as the chapter master, the demigod of war. And for the first time, the mask wasn't enough. He fought the Swarm Lord. This is a pivotal moment in the psychology of our protagonist. Up until this point, Calgar's imposter syndrome was internal. He feared being exposed as a fraud by his peers. But facing the Swarm Lord, he was exposed physically. The apex predator of the tyrannid hive mind didn't care about his title or his stolen honor. It dissected him. It tore him apart with a casual, terrifying efficiency. It stripped away his limbs, his armor, and his dignity, leaving him broken in the snow. But he didn't die, and that is the tragedy. While Calgar lay broken, being dragged to safety by his honor guard, the real heroes were dying. At the polar fortresses of Macragge, the veteran First Company, the absolute elite of the chapter, the men in Terminator armor who represented the pinnacle of Astartes warfare, made their last stand. They held the line to protect the planet's heart. They fought back to back, bolters roaring until the barrels melted, chain fists tearing through chitin until the power cells died. They fought to the last man. When the dust settled and the Tyrannid fleet was finally broken, Calgar was carried into the fortress. What he saw there would destroy a lesser mind. It was a cathedral of silence. The bodies of the First Company lay in heaps, buried under mountains of Tyrannid corpses. They had sold their lives dearly. They had died as legends. And Calgar, the serf, the imposter, he was still breathing. This is the genesis of survivor's guilt on a scale that creates monsters. In modern psychology, survivor's guilt is common among veterans who return home when their squad mates do not. They ask, "Why me? Why was I spared? Was I too cowardly? Did I not fight hard enough?" For Tacitan, the guilt is compounded by his secret. He looked at the broken bodies of the First Company Terminators, men of noble lineage, men who were true Astartes in every sense of the word, and he saw the universe's sick joke. The heroes died. The liar lived. The best and brightest of the generation were wiped out, leaving him, the fake, to rebuild the ruins. This trauma fundamentally changed how Calgar operated. Before Macragge, he was a warrior trying to prove he belonged. After Macragge, He became a machine trying to punish himself for surviving. He allowed the tech marines to rebuild him, but he didn't just replace his lost limbs. He became more metal than flesh. The gauntlets of Ultramar, those massive power fists, became a permanent part of his silhouette. He became the Broken Colossus. People look at Calgar's cybernetics and see strength. They see a man too tough to die. But look closer. He turned himself into a living tank. He encased himself in layers of ceramite and adamantium, burying the human flesh deep, deep inside. It's a physical manifestation of his psychological state. He is fortifying the lie. He is building a wall so thick that no one can ever get in again to hurt him, and more importantly, so the Tacitan inside can never get out. This explains his legendary stoicism. Stoicism, in its popular American interpretation, is often confused with being emotionless. We think of the strong, silent type, the cowboy who doesn't flinch. But true stoicism, the philosophy of Marcus Aurelius, is about enduring pain because you have a duty to something greater than yourself. Calgar's stoicism isn't natural. It is a defense mechanism. He cannot afford to grieve. If he cries for the First Company, he might admit why he is crying. He might admit that he feels unworthy of their sacrifice. So he shuts it down. He locks his emotions in a mental vault. He becomes the quiet professional, not because he has nothing to say, but because if he starts speaking, he might scream. This trauma also explains his obsession with logistics and administration, the boring side of war. After the First Company died, Calgar realized that heroism is inefficient. Heroism gets you killed. Heroism leaves the chapter headless. So, he doubled down on the Guilliman doctrine. He became the ultimate administrator. He focused on supply lines, recruitment quotas, and defensive perimeters. He stopped trying to be Achilles and started trying to be Eisenhower. He rebuilt the Ultramarines not as a band of heroes, but as an industrial machine of war. Why? Because machines don't have souls to lose. Machines can be replaced. If he could turn the chapter into a system, then maybe, just maybe, he wouldn't have to feel the crushing weight of individual loss ever again. But the universe wasn't done with him. It had one more humiliation in store. Just as he had finally cemented his place as the grim, unshakable grandfather of the Imperium, the father returned. Robute Guilliman woke up. Imagine spending 400 years keeping a house standing through a hurricane. You fix the roof, you patch the walls, you starve yourself to pay the mortgage. You think, finally, I have done it. I have proven I am the master of this house. And then, the original owner walks in the front door, looks around and says, "You changed the furniture. I don't like it." Part 4. The Middle Manager's Crisis. The return of Robute Guilliman was celebrated as a miracle. Across the 500 worlds of Ultramar, bells tolled, statues were erected, and grown men wept openly in the streets. The avenging son, the demigod, the biological father of the chapter, had returned from the dead to save humanity. But for Marneus Calgar, the miracle tasted like ash. Imagine you are the CEO of a Fortune 500 company. For 4 centuries, you have steered the ship through the worst economic depressions imaginable. You kept the company solvent when competitors were going bankrupt. You made the hard choices. You signed the layoff notices. You buried the dead. You built a legacy of stability and efficiency that became the gold standard for the entire industry. Then, one Tuesday morning, the founder walks back in. He hasn't been in the office for 10,000 years. He doesn't know how the new software works. He doesn't know the names of the staff. But he walks into your office, sits in your chair and says, "Thank you for keeping the seat warm. I'll take it from here." And just like that, Marneus Calgar, the Lord of Macragge, the man who held the line against the Tyranids, the man who gave his limbs for the Imperium, was demoted. He wasn't fired. That would have been easier. If he had been fired, he could have retired with dignity. No, he was kept on. He was moved to the desk next to the big office. He became the COO to Guilliman's CEO. This dynamic creates a psychological pressure cooker that resonates deeply with the modern American workforce, specifically the sandwich generation of management. In business terms, this is the classic friction between the visionary and the operator. Think of the relationship between Steve Jobs and Tim Cook. Gilliman is Steve Jobs 2.0. He is the visionary. He comes back with big, disruptive ideas. He launches the Primaris project, a new product line of bigger, stronger, better Space Marines. He rewrites the Codex Astartes. He launches the Indomitus Crusade to reconquer the galaxy. He is charismatic, inspiring, and completely focused on the big picture. Calgar is Tim Cook. He is the operator. He is the guy who knows how the supply chain works. He knows how many bolt shells are in the armory. He knows the political nuances of the local planetary governors. He is the quiet professional who ensures the visionary's dreams don't collapse under their own weight. But in the lore, specifically in novels like Dark Imperium, we see the friction. Gilliman micromanages. He critiques the state of Ultramar, pointing out inefficiencies and stagnation. To Gilliman, the last 10,000 years have been a dark age of decay. To Calgar, those 10,000 years were his life's work. Every time Gilliman criticizes the stagnation of the Imperium, Calgar hears an indictment of his own leadership. He hears, "You weren't good enough. You just survived. You didn't thrive." For a man suffering from imposter syndrome, this is catastrophic. Tacitan, the serf inside the armor, starts to panic. He thinks, he knows. The Primarch sees through me. He sees that I am just a steward, a placeholder, a peasant pretending to be a king. This leads to a phenomenon we see in corporate America every day: middle management burnout. Recent data suggests that over 66% of middle managers feel overwhelmed and underappreciated. They are stuck between the impossible demands of the executives above them and the resistance of the workforce below them. Calgar is the ultimate middle manager of the Millennium. Above him, he has a Primarch who demands he reorganize the entire logistical structure of a sector in a week. Below him, he has his own men, the firstborn Marines, who are terrified of being replaced by the new Primaris Marines. They look to Calgar for reassurance. They want to know that they still matter. Calgar is trapped. He has to implement the changes that make his own veteran brothers obsolete, all while smiling and nodding at the father who made them obsolete. He becomes the shock absorber for the chapter's anxiety. This accumulation of stress, the demotion, the micromanagement, the feeling of obsolescence, pushes Calgar toward a dark conclusion. He begins to feel that his time is over, that he is a relic. He starts looking for a way out. Not suicide, he is too loyal for that. But he starts looking for a good death, a sacrifice that will justify his existence one last time. He stops fighting to live and starts fighting to matter. This mindset explains his suicidal bravery in the campaigns that followed. It explains why, when the War Master of Chaos, Abaddon the Despoiler, descended upon the world of Vigilus, Calgar didn't call for backup. He didn't wait for the Primarch. He went out alone. He walked into a duel he knew he couldn't win, against an opponent fueled by the dark gods, armed with a sword that could cut through reality. Critics and fans often mock this moment. They call it the Worf effect, the trope where a strong character gets beaten up just to show how strong the villain is. They say Calgar was humiliated at Vigilus. But they are looking at the wrong metrics. They are judging a tank by the standards of a duelist. Calgar didn't go to Vigilus to win a sword fight. He went there to do the one thing Tacitan has always done better than anyone else: suffer. He went there to be a meat shield for the galaxy. Part 5. The Tank, Redefining Failure. There is a term in pop culture criticism called the Worf effect. Named after the Klingon security officer in Star Trek, it refers to a narrative trope where a supposedly powerful character is beaten up by a new villain just to establish how dangerous that villain is. For years, the Warhammer community has labeled Marneus Calgar as the ultimate victim of the Worf effect. They look at his track record: maimed by the Swarm Lord, defeated by Abaddon, overshadowed by Gilliman, and they see a punching bag. They see a character whose only job is to bleed so others can look cool. But this perspective is fundamentally flawed. It judges a fish by its ability to climb a tree. It judges a tank by the metrics of a duelist. If we analyze the Battle of Vigilus through the lens of sports analytics, think Moneyball for super soldiers, or the mechanics of an MMO raid, the picture changes completely. Calgar isn't a DPS, damage per second class. He isn't a duelist. He is a tank. His value isn't measured in how many enemies he kills in single combat. It is measured in how much punishment he can absorb before he drops, and how much time that suffering buys for the rest of the team. The duel at Vigilus is the perfect case study. The context is apocalyptic. Abaddon, the despoiler, the war master of chaos, has returned. He wields the talon of Horus and the demon sword Dracnian, a weapon that doesn't just cut flesh. It screams, it hungers, it tears holes in the fabric of reality. Abaddon is, for all intents and purposes, the Antichrist of the setting. When Calgar meets him on the battlefield, it is not a contest of equals. Calgar knows this. Tacitan, the pragmatist inside the armor, knows this. He has run the simulations. He knows that in a fair fight, he dies in 30 seconds. So he doesn't fight fair. He doesn't try to win. He tries to stall. The fight is brutal to watch. It is less of a duel and more of a demolition. Dracnian slices through the gauntlets of Ultramar, relics that are supposed to be indestructible, like they are made of paper. The demon's sword shears off Calgar's fingers. It slashes his chest, carving through the fused ribcage to sever both of his hearts. Finally, it sweeps up and cuts his throat, severing the windpipe and the arteries. By any standard definition of combat, Calgar lost. He was butchered. But look at the clock. Every second Abaddon spent carving up Calgar was a second he wasn't commanding his fleet. Every blow Calgar absorbed was a blow that didn't land on the planet's shield generators. Calgar played the aggro game perfectly. He taunted the War Master. He baited him into a personal vendetta. He used his own body as a resource, spending his blood like currency. And in the final moment, as he lay dying in the mud, throat open to the sky, the trap sprung. An Eldar stealth ship, using the distraction Calgar provided, rammed into the Vengeful Spirit, Abaddon's flagship. Abaddon was forced to teleport away. He won the fight, but he lost the war. This is the strategic genius of Tacitan. He understands that honor is a resource, just like ammunition. He was willing to spend his reputation, to let the galaxy see him beaten and broken, to secure the objective. Defense wins championships. It's an old American sports cliché, but it applies here. Calgar is the defensive line of the Imperium. He doesn't need to score the touchdown. He just needs to stop the other team from moving the ball, even if it means breaking every bone in his body. But there is a darker layer to this sacrifice. Remember the Imposter Syndrome? Remember the survivor's guilt? Deep down, Tacitan wanted to die at Vigilus. He didn't throw the fight, but he welcomed the end. To fall in battle against the archenemy, to die holding the line for the Emperor. That would have been the perfect ending to his stolen story. It would have balanced the ledger. It would have been the final payment for the life of the real Marneus Calgar. He lay there, hearts stopped, blood pooling around his head, and he probably felt a sense of relief. It is done. I can rest now. I kept the promise. But the Imperium is cruel. It does not let its useful tools retire, not even in death. The apothecaries descended like vultures. They didn't see a man who had earned his rest. They saw a valuable asset that needed repair. They dragged his corpse back to the surgery tables. They pumped him full of stimulants. They stitched the throat, replaced the hearts, reconnected the nerves. And then, they did something even more radical. They decided that since he was basically dead anyway, they might as well use him as a guinea pig for the most dangerous medical procedure in existence, the Rubicon Primaris. This brings us to the final act of our tragedy, the moment where Calgar is stripped of the last thing that made him human, his mortality. Part 6. Rubicon and the Verdict. The Rubicon Primaris is not just a surgery, it is a death sentence that you might wake up from. When Calgar was brought back from Vigilus, shredded by the talon of Horus and drained of nearly every drop of blood. The logic of the situation dictated that he should be interred in a dreadnought. He should have been placed in a metal sarcophagus to sleep, waking only for war. It would have been a fitting end for the tank of the Imperium. But Calgar refused. Or perhaps Tacitan refused. The new Primaris Marines were being viewed with suspicion by the rank and file. They were stronger, faster, and taller, but they were outsiders. The chapter was fracturing. They needed a bridge. They needed proof that the old and the new could coexist. So, the broken man on the stretcher volunteered. He told the apothecaries to cut him open one last time. The procedure is gruesome. It involves cracking the chest open, inserting 3 new organs, the Magnificat, the Belisarian furnace, and the sinew coils, and then jump-starting the system with enough chemical stimulants to kill an Ogrin. During the operation, Calgar died. This is a matter of record. His flatline wasn't a blip, it was a sustained event. He drifted into the darkness. And in that darkness, we have to imagine the confrontation that has been building for 400 years. Imagine Tacitan, the soul stripped of armor, standing in the void. And facing him is the ghost of the boy he left on the moon of Nova Thulium, the real Marneus Calgar. For centuries, Tacitan ran from this ghost. He hid behind duty. He hid behind the Codex. But here, at the edge of existence, there is nowhere to hide. Does the ghost accuse him? Does it point a finger and scream, "Thief"? Or does it look at the scars on Tacitan's soul, the psychic wounds from the Tyranids, the shame of the fallen, the exhaustion of eternal leadership, and offer forgiveness? Maybe the ghost doesn't say anything. Maybe it just fades away, finally realized that the debt is paid. Tacitan has suffered enough. He has died 1,000 deaths for that one life he couldn't save. Then, the Belisarian furnace kicked in. The new organ flooded his system with hypersteroids. The hearts, both the old and the new, slammed back into rhythm. The monitors screamed. Calgar gasped. He tore through the restraints. He rose from the table not as a broken man, but as a giant. He was taller now. His armor had to be refitted. The wounds from Abaddon were gone, replaced by fresh muscle and ceramite. He had crossed the Rubicon. He had cheated death again. But more importantly, he had crossed a psychological threshold. When he looked in the mirror, he didn't see the serf anymore. The serf died on the table. The man who woke up was simply the chapter master. The synthesis was complete. The lie had been told for so long, and with such conviction, that it had become the truth. This brings us to the verdict. We started this journey by asking if Marneus Calgar is a fraud. We asked if his stolen valor negates his heroism. In the United States, we have the tomb of the unknown soldier. We honor the men whose names we lost, who gave everything for the nation. We don't care about their lineage. We don't care if they were rich or poor, sinners or saints. We care that they stood the line. Tacitan is the ultimate unknown soldier, but instead of a tomb, he was given a throne. His story challenges the very foundation of the Imperium. The Imperium believes in blood. It believes in breeding. It believes that heroes are born. Tacitan proves that heroes are made. They are made from the people who are willing to show up when everyone else runs away. They are made from the people who are willing to carry a burden that isn't theirs. Is he an imposter? Yes, technically. But consider this. The real Marneus Calgar died at the age of 12 because he was too weak to kill a traitor. The fake Marneus Calgar held the gate against an orc wog alone for a day and a night. He crushed the avatar of Cain. He held off the despoiler. He kept the realm of Ultramar burning bright in a galaxy of darkness. If that is what a liar does, then maybe we need more liars. Maybe the American dream of the 41st millennium isn't about getting rich. Maybe it's about the freedom to choose your own damnation. Tacitan chose his. He looked at the role of a hero, saw the horror and the pain it entailed, and said, "I'll take it." The next time you see the blue giant on the screen, smashing through hordes of Xenos with the gauntlets of Ultramar, Don't just cheer for the Space Marine. Cheer for the little boy from the fields of Nova Thulium. Cheer for the serf who refused to let the story end in a cave. Because Marneus Calgar might be a lie, but he is the most honest thing in the entire galaxy. The mask is no longer a disguise, it is his face, and he will wear it until the stars go out.